Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and a big welcome to those of you who are new here, my new subscribers. I'm glad you guys are here, and I hope you guys are blessed by these videos. Today we are in our Keepers at Home series. We are taking a biblical look at our possessions. That means, the things we own, money, although the money we're not going to touch on too much because that could be a whole nother video. We're going to talk about mostly the things that we own and that we have. So clothes, kitchen supplies, all of that. We're going to break it down, and we're going to talk about what the Bible says about our possessions, like how the New Testament church viewed possessions will be thrown in there too. We're going to talk about healthy and unhealthy views of our things, which will kind of wrap with the Bible verses too. And then we're going to talk about, actually applying these principles to the things that we own in our homes already. But first, we are going to pray for this video. As always, God, thank you for the first beautiful signs of spring. Thank you for all of the things and all of the resources that you have given each and every single one of us. Thank you for trusting us with them, asking us to care for them, and for giving us an abundance so we can help other people. I ask that you would bless anybody who's listening to me right now. Bless them with abundance and bless them with a kind and generous heart. I ask these things in Jesus Christ's name. Okay, so we're going to talk about a few different Bible verses. I'm going to start probably in Luke, and we'll keep going. But if you have your Bibles, go ahead and open them up, read them along with me. I always want you guys to double check the scriptures because it's a smart thing to do, and it just helps you. If you're anything like me, I have a hard time listening to somebody audibly and remembering what they're saying, but if I have it in text in front of me and I'm reading along with them, then it sticks better in my brain. So some of you might be like that, and if you are, you can go ahead and pull those Bibles open. We're going to start in Luke in chapter 12, verse 15. Which says, "And he said unto them," this is Jesus talking, okay, "Take heed and beware of covetousness, for a man's life consisteth not in the abundance of the things which he possesseth." Now, Jesus himself, he knew what our culture was going to look like this day and age. Even back then, there were kings and stuff in palaces with tons of possessions and things, and even nowadays, especially in the era of fast fashion and, cheap plastic things that you can buy that are made in China, a lot of people, myself included, okay? I'm not judging anybody in this video. I used to have a book collection that was 2,000 books strong, guys. So, no shame to anybody. But a lot of us have a lot of things. Now, of course, there are people out there who have next to nothing, and I'm not necessarily talking about them in this video. I'm talking to those of us who, are probably lower middle class to upper middle class or beyond, those of us who have a good deal of things, a good deal of possessions, your closet has quite a few clothes in it. Your kitchen may be slightly disorganized because there's so many Tupperwares in there, you know what I mean? That's what I'm talking about here. And I think, especially today's day and age when there's social media and all the online stuff that bombards us, all over the place. I mean, you go to the grocery store and there's home magazines and all the things saying, oh, look at this aesthetic. Why don't you buy this? Why don't you buy that? And so when we take a look at the things that we are purchasing, and I would challenge you, I had to do this myself too. God walked me through this where it was okay, why are you buying the things that you're buying? Why do you feel the need to add more to your closet when your closet's already almost full? Why do you feel the need to have 2,000 books at one point? Why do you feel the need to keep having more? And if you look into your heart on that and you really think about that, and the reason ends up being because you're trying to make your home look like a magazine, or you're trying to look as fashionable as that one person on Instagram or on TikTok or YouTube or whatever, or you're trying to keep up with somebody else, or keep up with somebody else's lifestyle, or you just want to have the nice image of having a fancy car, I think that's where covetousness comes into play, right? Like it says, you know, I think it's end of Hebrews, maybe. Or is it James? Somewhere. It talks about, you know, being content with the things that we have, you know, because our life is not in our stuff. Our life is in our relationship with God. Our life is in our relationship with the people around us. Our life is in, like, the experiences we have and the things we do. And our life is not found in the 5 spatulas you might have in your kitchen drawer or the 15 plus pairs of shoes that you own. You know, those aren't our life. They're just things, right? I feel like a lot of the time we put way too much value on things, and we almost give things, all of our stuff, like precedence above God. And that's not good, of course, because God loves us and he gets jealous when we're giving our time and attention, like, to things that are not him. So if you're giving all of your time and attention to online shopping or going to a store and trying on all the clothes, you know, or trying to get that perfect aesthetic somewhere in your home, you know, like, there comes a point where it's like, okay, this might be too much, you know, like, you might need to refocus and pull yourself back in. Like I said, I'm not shaming anybody here. I'm just pointing things out. I had to go through this stuff myself. Okay, I've been there, done that. And covetousness, of course, is greed, or like you're looking at what somebody else has. It also says in the Bible not to covet your neighbor's wife, right? So if you're looking at what somebody else has and you're jealous of it, you know, you're like, oh, that person has a better car than I do, or, you know, those sorts of things. And that's what drives us sometimes. And I think that's an unhealthy thing. And Jesus himself says it's unhealthy, you know? All right. Another point to take away from this, our life doesn't consist in our things. I think I said that right. Maybe not. Oh, well, you know what I mean, right? But a view that I like to take of it is, okay, when I leave this earth, right? Eventually, hopefully, it's when I'm old and gray and have had a full life. Might be sooner, who knows? But when I do go, right? What's going to happen to all my stuff? Like, is my stuff going to be in good enough condition to pass on to somebody else? Is my stuff cheap and plasticky and going to end up in the garbage? Is my stuff, you know, like, eventually at the end of its life cycle, is it biodegradable? You know, like, I think about those things, like, after, especially, I think a lot of people will start thinking about that sort of stuff if you have a family member pass away and you have to go through all of the things they left behind, and you're like, why did they keep that? Like, why are there 12 wrenches that are all the same size? You know what I mean? Like, when we leave, when we're gone, when it's done, what is going to happen to our stuff? Like, I think it's important that we don't leave an insane amount of stuff for the next generation to deal with. Speaking from experience here, having been, you know, the next a couple generations down and having to go through things, like so much stuff that wasn't mine, wasn't useful, like Burger King flyers from the 90s that got kept, you know, like just random stuff that, you know, you leave a mess and then somebody else has to deal with it. And that person's life then gets interrupted because they're having to deal with all of the things that you didn't deal with while you were alive, right? I've heard, if you've ever heard of, what is it, Swedish death cleaning? I know it sounds morbid, but it's actually a book I read ages ago where apparently in Sweden, again, I don't know, I don't live there, but a lot of the elderly people will start paring down their things as they get older and start passing on things to the next generation. Like, I know this, I want to give to that person. So they'll give it to them early. So that way, you know, when they do pass, there's very few things that need to be dealt with. And personally, I like that point of view. But that's just me. All right, we're going to skip to Luke chapter 12, verse 16 through 21. And this is Jesus talking. He's speaking a parable here. Okay. It says, "And he spake a parable unto them, saying, The ground of a certain rich man brought forth plentifully. And he thought within himself, saying, "What shall I do? Because I have no room where to bestow my fruits." And he said, "This will I do. I will pull down my barns and build greater. And there will I bestow all my fruits and my goods. And I will say to my soul, Soul, thou hast much goods laid up for many years. Take thine ease, eat, drink, and be merry." But God said unto him, "Thou fool, this night thy soul shall be required of thee. Then whose shall those things be, which thou hast provided? So is he that layeth up treasure for himself, and is not rich towards God." Right? So basically what I was saying about we don't know when we're going to go, of course. So, what's going to happen to those things when we're gone? If we are laying up treasures for ourselves, or, hoarding a lot of things, being like, "Oh, I'm just going to keep all this stuff, just in case I need it," even though you haven't maybe touched it in like 10 years. Been there, done that myself too, right? But if we're holding on to all these things, right, it's almost like we're wrapping our security and our sense of comfort and our identity in our stuff. And all of those three of those things should be found in God. Like, our security should be found in God. Our comfort should be found in God. Our identity should be found in God. It shouldn't be found in inanimate objects that can't do nothing to really help us at the end of the day. Like, all of those things, we should not be putting those things in God's place, And like I said, God is a jealous God. Like, he wants us to spend time with him, right? But he also wants us to be responsible with the things that he gives us, whether that be our time, our energy, our talents, our money, our resources, our things. He wants us to steward these things well. That way, we are, reflecting good on him, If you're looking at someone at the church, right? And I know a lot of people do this. A lot of people will look to people who go to church, right? They'll look at them and watch their lifestyle when they're not at church to see if it matches up with what we say at church, right? All the things you say at church about, giving to the poor, helping the needy, taking care of your neighbor, all of these things, being kind, being generous, all of those things we say at church. The question is, do we practice those things when we're not in church, right? And I think a good way to look at it in view of our stuff, right? We're going to move into healthy and unhealthy views, right? Our stuff should be useful tools to help further the kingdom of God, basically, right? Of course, things are going to be aesthetically pleasing and such like that. We'll get into that in a second. Let's take a quick look at Luke, still in chapter 12, verse 34. It says, where your treasure is, there will your heart be also, right? So if our treasure is our stuff, our heart's going to be with our stuff. If our treasure is God, if our comfort is God, if God is our number one, then that's where our heart's going to be. Now, healthy views of our things, of course, we're not going to sell everything we have and probably go live on a street corner buck naked. Like, things are a part of our lives, whether we like it or not. We all have stuff, right? Clothes, shoes, kitchen utensils, backpacks, and all the things, ironing boards, like, there's so many different things that can be a part of our lives, right? That are kind of in our homes, cars, whatever else. And most of these things should be viewed, of course, as tools. They're things to help us do something. Like, my washing machine is to help me get my clothes clean, right? My towels are to help dry me off or wipe up spills or whatever, like, they should have functions, right? Now, of course, some things are going to be aesthetically pleasing, and some things' only purpose is going to be aesthetically pleasing. See that picture over there? Its only purpose in life is to be aesthetically pleasing. Do I think that all of our things should be, only aesthetically pleasing? Probably not. Now, of course, there are things that are useful as well as being aesthetically pleasing. like this oil lamp. Both useful and pretty. And, you know, there are things in our daily lives where if we are going to purchase something new to come into our lives, of course, when I go to look for something that I'm going to purchase that's going to be new, I'm going to be looking for functionality as well as aesthetically pleasing. You know, you're trying to get the best of both worlds. Like with clothes, you want them to be functional but also be aesthetically pleasing. And the same goes with our other things. Now, another healthy view is that our stuff serves a purpose, right? Or it's aesthetically pleasing, and it's here to benefit us. But it's also here to benefit other people. So my kitchen utensils benefit myself, right? But they also benefit anybody that I'm cooking for. Whether that be family members, friends, you know, baking bread and then giving it to other people. These things are both useful. They benefit me, but they also benefit other people. Now, another healthy view is that we should only have the amount of things that we can realistically take care of, right? So for me, a lot of my possessions need care, right? Like your clothes need to be washed or mended or ironed, you know, all of those things. I have, you know, since it's on the table, since I just oiled it anyway, I have things that are made out of wood, like kitchen utensils that occasionally need to be re-oiled. Like I just put some olive oil on some of my wooden stuff today. And of course, you know, they need to be washed, they need to be cleaned, they need to be stored properly and organized. Every single thing that we bring into our home requires time and energy out of us, right? And realistically, we only have so much time and energy in a day after, you know, working or making meals, you know, picking up after kids, running errands and all the things. And of course, you know, sleep needs to be thrown in there sometime too. So having more things than we can take care of is not very healthy. We should only have the amount of things that realistically we can take care of. Like if something is sitting somewhere untouched for many, many years and gets dusty and decrepit and just gross or ends up with bugs in it or something, you know, we aren't really taking care of it. And we're supposed to be taking care of our resources and the things that God gives us, right? And of course, you know, we're going to go to the Bible one more time. And in Acts chapter 2, we're going to look at the New Testament church here because they were pretty radical, guys, with their possessions. I'm going to tell you, I am not necessarily advocating for doing exactly what they did, but they were pretty cool about it, guys. So Acts chapter 2, verse 44 to 47. So these are the converts and the people who are believing in Jesus after Jesus already went back up to heaven, guys. It says, and all that believed were together and had all things common. They sold their possessions and goods and parted them to all men as every man had need. And they, continuing daily with one accord in the temple and breaking bread from house to house, did eat their meat with gladness and singleness of heart, praising God and having favor with all the people. And the Lord added to the church daily such as should be saved. So these guys were selling things off they didn't need, giving to other people in the community who did, right? And they're together. They're holding things common, you know? They're not like saying, oh, this is just mine and nobody else can touch it, you know? Like they're taking care of each other in a radical way that you don't really see these days. And I'm not advocating for going and living in a commune and selling all of your things, you know? But I would argue that our heart posture should be that our things are a tool to help other people, and we should be using those things to help others, especially others in the community of believers, right? Practically, what does this look like, right? Because we have a lot of stuff. Everybody does. You know, most people. Not everybody. There's people who don't have much at all, and we're called to help those people. But the vast majority of people have a lot of things, right? And when we look at our things, I think it's important to evaluate our things, right? So if you're gonna like reorganize a cupboard or reorganize a drawer, taking a moment to look at the items that are in it and ask a few questions about those items. can help you in the long run, right? So evaluating our things. So if you're going through a kitchen cupboard, a box in the basement, whatever it is, asking yourself, does this thing serve a purpose in my life? And I'm not talking about the purpose of sitting in a box and never coming out because you don't really ever use it. I'm talking, does this thing actively serve a purpose in my life? Do I actively pull this kitchen spatula out and use it every day? Do I actively, reach for that teacup or whatever it is, or this piece of clothing? Do I actively wear this piece of clothing? Not just, oh, it's been sitting on a hanger for 3 years. Like, do you actively use it, right? Is anything that you have a duplicate? So if you have 5 spatulas, do you really need 5 spatulas? Are there ever 5 people cooking with spatulas at the same time in your house? If the answer is yes, then maybe that's totally fine and you keep those. But if the answer is no, like, I never need maybe any more than absolutely 2 at the most, so that's all I keep personally, right? Tools, hobby stuff falls under that. Is anything a duplicate, Number 3, is it aesthetically pleasing? We're going to ask the question because, it's a question you're asking yourself anyway when you look at something. Do I like it? Is it nice to look at, Now, I would argue that aesthetically pleasing, the things that literally their only purpose is to be aesthetically pleasing, you know what I mean? I would argue that those things should probably be maybe like no more than 5% of what we own, like tchotchkes and things like that. And I would argue that 95% of what we own, even if it is aesthetically pleasing, should have a purpose, should have some sort of function in your life. Because if you're going like 15, 20, 30, 50% of your things are just there to look nice, then you're then spending a lot of time taking care of that thing, right? You're dusting it, you're washing it, whatever else. And that's a lot of time and energy put into something that's just meant to be pretty. I think our time could be better spent, but that's just me. Let's see. Will you use it in the next year or 2? If you're pushing it here. Will you use it in the next year or 2? This could apply to sporting equipment or, clothes that you don't take out very often, fancier clothes, tools, hobby supplies, like all of those things. Am I realistically going to use it? Like, I personally recently went through all of my art supplies and I decided, there's a lot of stuff here that I no longer need, I haven't used, and I don't plan on using in the next year or 2. So, like, I used to paint a lot, right? I also draw and do other things, but the painting stuff, I'm like, okay, when's the last time I actually bothered to sit down and do this? Like 5 years ago? Do I actually plan to sit down and do this in the next few years? Probably not. I've got other hobbies now that I do and take up the majority of my time. So I took my canvases, and the brushes that I wasn't going to use anymore, and the paints. And I took those things, and I'm like, okay, who do I know who would get enjoyment out of this? Who do I know who would like to use this? Who do I know that this would serve them better than it does me by sitting in my basement, right? And then, of course, giving it to the people that you think would use it and love it and have more enjoyment of it than you do, right? Let's see, number 5. Does having it stress you out or make you happy? Does having a scale to measure your weight stress you out or does it make you happy? Does, having this big collection of tchotchkes stress you out, having to clean them every time you have to go and dust them and try and vacuum them and do all the things? Or does looking at them really bring you joy, right? Number 6, do I have the time and energy to actually take care of it? Because there could be things that do have a function. There could be things that are nice and pretty. There could be things, that you plan on maybe using. But realistically, do you have the time to take care of that thing? So for me, not having an insane amount of clothes that I cannot realistically take care of and manage. or, you know, pots and pans. You know, like I personally have cast iron skillets because I like those better than all the rest, and they can last you a lifetime if you take care of them properly, right? So I had to consciously make the decision of, okay, I want to keep my cast irons instead of, you know, buying some other cheapy non-stick nonsense. But I also know that having those means I have to take time to clean them properly. I have to take the time to make sure they are oiled properly. Like, I have to take the time to store them and manage them properly, right? And that takes time out of our day. Number 7, are they made of a good, sturdy, eco-friendly material? A lot of things this day and age are made out of plastic. Plastic is not God-made, guys. Plastic is man-made. It's synthetic. It disintegrates very easily. Like, it shouldn't really be near any of your food, to be quite honest, because although, to be frank, I do have like glass Tupperware with plastic lids. What are you gonna do? But most of the things that I particularly like to have are made out of wood or metal, you know, things that are going to last a lifetime, and like I'm not gonna have to go out and rebuy or repurchase these things every couple of years. I mean, when I was a teenager, I used to like go to the dollar store and buy a hairbrush, and then it would disintegrate and like fall apart before the next year, so I would go buy another one, and by the time, you know, you're buying maybe 2 brushes a year over the course of however many years, it's way better for your wallet and for the earth to just go buy like an actual wood hairbrush that's properly done. And that's good and sturdy and will last you a lifetime if you take care of it properly, right? And that also, if you're buying things that are going to last longer and you're going to take care of them well, then you are freeing up money in the long term. Like my cast iron skillets, some of them I bought new, some of them, you know, were passed down. I think maybe I got one of them at a thrift store or something like that. But all of those can last like generations and generations. And how do I know that? Because a lot of these things end up at the thrift stores when people pass away. Because other family members are like, I use non-stick skillets, I don't want that one, you know? That also goes for your clothes, you know? Like old, thicker cotton material or wool versus all of the really thin, horrible materials they have out these days. I mean, the last time I bought a shirt new was like $15, right? And it was such thin material. And it was cotton, right? But it was so thin that the first time I washed it, it ended up with a hole. I prefer going to the thrift store. If it lasted long enough to get to the thrift store, I know it's probably been through at least one wash, so it should be good. But when we evaluate our things, I think it's important to make sure that you are not feeling guilt for letting something go. I think the easiest way to let something go is if you know somebody else who will use it. If you know somebody else who can make use out of it or who would enjoy it way more than you do, it makes the letting go a lot easier. And if you're financially in a place to do so, letting go of something for free just to bless somebody else, it really makes your heart feel happy on the inside. So you should never feel guilt over realizing that something no longer serves a purpose for you. Like, use the money that you spent on that thing now to bless somebody else. Give it to somebody else who will use it, enjoy it, and love it, right? Let's see. And that's where I think it's important that after we go through our things, purge whatever needs to go, you know, gift things to other people, and you're really down to what serves you and what is aesthetically pleasing and what you really, really love. And like, well, I should probably say like, because you probably shouldn't love your things. You should only be loving God and other people, right? But once you're down to, you know, your manageable amount of possessions, whatever that number may be, some people go and like want to live in their car and travel around for a few years, so they have very, very, very few things. You do you. Some people have a bit more because that's just how they roll, or you're having family dinners with like 12 people over, so you have 12 sets of plates and cups. Again, you do you. But once you're down to that number, whatever that may be, I think it's then important to consider when we go to purchase new things, taking into account, of course, evaluating all those questions before you even purchase it. That way you don't have to spend the money if you don't need to. Thinking about, is this thing useful? Is this thing going to serve a purpose in my life? Do I have something at home that already serves this function or already looks like this, right? If you are going to purchase something, I would look into what the material is that it's made out of, whether that's something that could last a lifetime. You want longevity out of your pieces. So with my rolling pin here, it's made out of wood. And it is a very thick, sturdy wood, right? So if I take care of it, and I found this thing in an antique store, guys, so it has already had a lifetime with somebody else, right? Maybe more than one, I don't know. But I found it in an antique store. And if I take care of it, and, oil it occasionally and stuff like that, wash it well, and store it properly, it can last my entire life, right? And I will never have to buy another rolling pin ever again. And it's made out of wood, of course, so at the end of its life cycle, it will be decomposed back into the ground as it's meant to. But if we purchase things that are going to last, if we purchase things and we put that much extra forethought into what we buy before we buy it, number one, we'll probably buy less. And the money that we do spend will be spent towards something that can last, right? And then that frees up our extra resources of money to go do other things or help other people or have an experience or, go fly across the country to be with your family or something like that for a while. I think that's about all the things I have to say on our possessions. So just some food for thought, Take it as you will. Again, no shame. I've gone through this myself and probably will still continue to pull things out of drawers or out of closets and be like, why do I have that? Why am I keeping that? I don't actually use it, But I would like to think that eventually I will get to the point where I have just the things I need, just the things that serve a purpose for me, and a few things, of course, that are aesthetically pleasing, and the rest will be with other people. Go to help others. Alright, I hope this video has blessed you in some way, and stick around sometime for the next one. Bye, guys.